Well, welcome. Welcome to this PowerPoint entitled Part 1, a full CRI analysis using a case study model. And we're going to call this student Molly. That means we'll be modeling the CRI with Molly. And what will we do? Let's check out the directions. We're going to ask that you download a full case study. And the reason we ask that you don't print is that it's very, very lengthy, and you'll be able to read it from your screen. So let's look at this full case study. Let's get it right up to the beginning. This is Molly, who's a 4th grade student. She was administered the word lists and then went on to the passages. As you can see, this is a PDF file, which means you won't be able to, on your screen, score it. So, what have we done for you? We provided you with a coding sheet that will enable you to transcribe the scores that you give right onto this form. So let's study the form. We begin with word lists. As you can see, there were 3 grade levels, and what you will do is for each individual grade level, you will provide a flash score and an untimed score. Then, oral reading miscues. Again, there will be 3 passages, each of which will be read orally and coded with miscues. You are to analyze the miscues and tally up the number of miscues that maintain meaning, recorded here, the number that violate meaning, the number of self-corrections, and the number of non-words. And you do that for each of 3 grade levels. That takes us to retelling. In the retellings, we have a rubric. And for the narrative, there's consistency in that structure. We always begin with the character and the setting implied, the problem or the goal. Then the next 5 components of the grid or rubric deal with the steps involved in the problem or goal solution. And then finally, a personal response, which we really mean a critique. So you will transcribe the scores you give for the retelling of all 6 of the passages. 3rd oral, 3rd silent, and so forth. This takes us to the comprehension questions. And what we suggest here, as you can see, we have identified the type of question, text, inference, or critical response. But something else we've done, we've given you the intent of the question. So as you score the student's response, if the student is correct, all you simply do is put a plus here. But if the student has not provided you with the correct response, you will either give it a half or 0. What we suggest here is jot a little note down. Why? It really helps when it gets to instruction and intervention to know how the student thinks so that you can adapt your instruction to develop strength where strength does not now exist. All right, and you'll do that for all 6 of the passages read. For this part 1, we're going to do a little bit of it together. And then you will become independent and metacognitive. Why? You're going to finish grading it all on your own. And when you're finally finished and you've completely put all markings on your coding sheet, you transcribed every one, then you return for part 2 of the PowerPoint series. First, we're going to work together. All right? First one was relatively easy. 20 plus is a score of 100. So I thought I would go ahead and model a little bit of what we mean. Of the 20 responses, notice that there were 3 times when you could call it a miscue. The student simply says, I don't know. So I put that as interesting. No attempt on 3 of the miscues. All right? So you go ahead and finish that list and also the next grade level. And we will move now to the miscues. And I'll just talk about the miscues because you've already read the story. So here it says, besides, Grandpa had horses too, and David looked forward to learning how to ride. What this student said was, Grandpa had horses too, and David was looking forward. So what you have is one miscue. Even though he inserts was and substitutes looking, we would call that one. David was looking instead of looked. So over here we put a plus. Maintained meaning. Move down. This sentence will start with the hey, substituted in for with, which maintains the meaning. So we're fine. All right, let's come up here. This sentence says, David was trudging slowly back, and this child said, tracking slowly back. Now that's a miscue that clearly violates the meaning. So we have a 0 for that miscue. Here we have, as the student was reading, if the sun rose at 10 o'clock and there wasn't so much hard work, maybe then maybe farming. So you see what happened? The student repeated because she had said maybe before the word then, and the self-correction was made. So that enables us to tally the scores. 3 maintained meaning, 1 violated, 1 self-correction, and 0 non-words. That takes us to the retelling you've read, and I'm going to quickly read it. What I read about was this boy named David who was supposedly on a vacation to his grandfather's farm. David was there to find out what farming was like. What he really wanted to do was ride on the horse, but sadly he never got a chance to do it. Grandpa makes him work very hard. Asked about it, it was okay, and then said nothing else. All right, so how did we score it? 1/2. Why? Grandma never mentioned. The character's goal or problem, right on target. So when we get to the process, we gave a plus because he wants to learn about farming. However, no reference to Grandma makes us score this a 1/2. David decides to keep working is a 0. It's never mentioned. He works hard all week. Never mentioned. David reconsiders. Never mentioned. Personal response, well developed. Nope, never mentioned. And we use the ASII, and the score is a 1. Comprehension questions. Why was David excited about visiting the farm? He wanted to ride the horses. You only had to identify 1, so we have a plus. How did he feel about farming at the end of the week? He wasn't sure, and that's a plus. Do you think that David lived near his grandfather? This is right on target. Probably not. This was his first visit, so we have a plus. Let's look here. Do you think Grandma was happy about how David's first week at the farm was going? This student uses pure speculation here. David's having fun. He was away from home. There's so much in that story about Grandma and her reaction that would enable you to make a good inference. He doesn't. She doesn't. Molly doesn't. What we have here, by the way, is quiz contestant thinking. 5. Do you think Grandpa really wanted David to become a farmer? He says probably. He tried to help him learn what farmers have to do. Then we moved on. What did David want most from Grandpa? A plus. To learn to ride the horses. 7, do you think David ever got to ride the horses? And he says, no, he never got the chance. He was working with grandfather. Plus. 8, why did David change his mind? He had to get up early. Another plus. We get to 9, do you think David and his grandfather had a close relationship? And this is a very good answer. He says, yes, he worked with him even though he really wanted to ride the horses. And now we get to 10. Was Grandpa fair to expect David to do so much work? And he says, yes, kids need to listen to grandparents. Again, no connection to the story whatsoever. Pure speculation, but the story's rich with the opportunity to make a valid judgment. So that means we had 4 text, 2 inference, and 2 critical response for a score of 80. Quickly, the best friend, we won't read the story, but we'll go to the retelling. A boy named Todd was in a race with mountain bikes. It's a team. He went out on his bike and told his mom not to let Dusty come, but she forgot because she told him to wear his helmet, so she forgot to get the dog. Todd went down a hill really fast and hit a rock and fell really hard. When the dog caught up to him, the dog started to bark loud and ran back to the house. Mom knew if Dusty wasn't with Todd, something was wrong, so she called the fire department and the firemen came. They followed Dusty up to him. They had to go to the hospital, but he can't ride now. Anything more about this story or reaction? It's an okay story. So what do we have for retelling? All right? We give a plus. He's got Todd, the mom, and the dog. What about Todd realizes what a good friend his dog is? No sign there, so we give it a 0. But look at this. Todd doesn't want his dog to come when he practices riding. Plus. Mom forgets to get Dusty. Plus. Todd's bike hits a rock. Todd's thrown to the ground. Now, he gives you enough here to give it full credit because the whole point is Todd's knocked down. And then Dusty finds Todd, runs home for help. Plus. Todd is all right, but realizes his dog is valuable. He didn't give us that. 0 and no personal response. So we have a retelling score of 1.5. All right, let's look at the comprehension questions here. What was Todd showing to his mom? His new jacket. Plus. What was Todd so excited about? He was in a race on his motorbike. Plus. How do you know Todd took the mountain bike race seriously? He was going to practice so he could get faster. Plus. Why would Todd think it was okay to practice without wearing his helmet? He was in a hurry, telling his mom to keep Dusty home. That's a good inference. Was it wise for Todd to ask Mom to keep Dusty home? No. Todd would have been laying there for hours. No one would know where he was. And that's a good plus. What made Dusty run back home? Because Todd wasn't talking, just laying there. Plus. Move to 7. Why did Todd think that he had to give his team a big lead? So they could win the race. If he practiced more, it would start them off in a good lead for the race. Very good answer. Plus. How did Mom realize that she needed help? Dusty barked. Todd wasn't with him. Plus. 9. Which is more helpful to Todd, the helmet or Dusty? Dusty. Because if he didn't bark so loud for the mother to come, Mother wouldn't have gotten help. Another powerful. But now here we go. Besides, always wear your helmet. What do you think is the most important lesson Todd learned? All right, there were lots. You should be careful that you're not careless. There was some beautiful thinking here. He ignores that all and doesn't generate a lesson. So that is a 0. All right, at this point, we've worked together. And what would we have here? We would have put our scores in here. We would have put our scores here. our retelling scores both here, and notice we just put pluses where we needed to. I'm going to jump this up in view so that you can really see it. Oh, it's pretty high up there, but let me try it anyway here, a little bit higher. There we go. So you see, all the pluses are there, and the only time you make a comment is an explanation. So here we have at the summary 80% following oral and 90% following silent. Now that we've modeled those first several ones, you're ready for your independent and metacognitive learning. And you'll feel good when you do well. We'll be back very soon for PowerPoint 2, where we're going to continue on with our analysis with Molly. See you soon.